Going back to Cal for a second. Why has there not been more talks about a contract with him? Why is it so quiet on that front, especially after he switched agents?
I don't know. I asked him about it, and Kyle just says like I'm open to listen. Just come with a real offer. I mean, I don't know. Like on some level, the pessimist, and you talk to some guys around baseball, is like, oh, they're just gonna mule him and run him into the ground over the next few years, and then say, and then trade him when he doesn't want to resign. And others are thinking, well, they're not in a position financially to make that investment. And then the people like you who wear the armadillo helmets will say the reason they haven't done this is because they already have Julio, and this ownership group eventually wants to sell within the next 3 years, and that's why they haven't made another major investment.
I don't get. I'm dumb. I don't get the armadillo reference.
So it's like, I don't remember. I think it was on the Dukes of Hazzard remake. This guy wore an armadillo helmet. I made out of a shell because he thought the FBI was stealing his brainwaves. So it's like the tinfoil hat.
Okay. You think my suggestion that they could contemplate selling the team is like
I mean, like given
I'm
what,
just wondering
given,
they don't spend any. I'm just saying that the signs of a team that wants to sell, they are showing signs of it.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, but given what the going rate for a franchise is and what you would make, every team should consider selling it.
100%.
I mean,
they'd be fools not to.
But no, I don't think so. I think because they're not operating. I mean, the only structural issue that is problem I think for the ownership group is the RSN situation, and that'll get figured out in the next few years, and I can talk about that too. But
sure.
they that'll get figured out in the next few years or so. Some stability will come to it. But yeah, I mean, like you look at the lease with the city, the upkeep of T-Mobile, like no park has aged better than T-Mobile. Maybe Coors, they're about the same. They've aged well. It's not like the Diamondbacks who are looking to redo their whole stadium here. You look at they invested money back in the day in the Dominican Summer League in their academy in the Dominican. That's like state of the art. Like they just, were able to, they're just unable to, like do some renovations down here at the spring training complex for very minimal money. Like they didn't go like the expensive route but they put in a lot of new stuff. So it looks not like a junior college back there. Like they've done a lot of stuff to make this more attractive for players and to make it more sustainable for success. So it's like, well, and then you're making money even without investing. Like they don't have to reinvest their money back into like reinvest outside money or their own money back into the organization because it makes enough money to sustain itself.
Right.
And I think so when you're operating on that level, you're like, okay, well, why would we sell if we're always going to be sustainable? And and you say what you want about Jerry and the 54% mindset, but what Scott Hunter has done in the draft and what they've done from a developmental aspect, they're always, I don't think we'll see the year where they lose 100 games again for quite a while because they put enough pieces together. Like it's self-sustaining in a lot of ways. You watch these prospects that are coming up and you watch, like I'm watching, Logan Evans throw and it's 97 and he throws 7 different pitches and you're like, well, he'll just bump right in. You watch Laz Montez and Colt Emerson and all these guys work around there and they look like grown-ass men at 18 years, 19 years old. You're like, okay, like there are pieces coming. This isn't like when, in 07 where they hitched their wagon to Uni Betancourt and Jose Lopez and didn't have anybody in the minors to challenge them. No, like they have real guys. Like Colt Emerson will replace JP Crawford in 2 years is my guess. Yeah. JP Crawford's contract will be up and Colt will take over and the Mariners will be happy. I mean, Cole Young, who looks like a kid out of Super Troopers right now with his mustache, will be the starting second baseman next year. I have no doubt in my mind, unless they trade him. Those two guys will be, in their lineup next year or in their lineup at some point next year. Colt probably won't debut till later in the year, but, Cole Young is fully expected to be the starting second baseman by next season, and he could be by the end of this season if he plays well in spring training.
You brought up the TV stuff, the RSN, the streaming stuff. I talked about this last week that I'm pretty confident that they're going to have a streaming aspect, to this. to this season, whether it's ready for opening day or not. What are you hearing? I know Kevin Martinez was on with Softy. I think he hinted at the same thing. What are you hearing on the streaming front? What are you hearing on the just the future of what their broadcasting is going to be for this season and then beyond?
So they are trying to get what they call direct to fan streaming or direct streaming without a third party, like Root, going through Root. I think even if they were to get a streaming product this year, it's still got the Root label on it. You see the Root thing. It might even be an app that you have to go through Root, but you would pay a fee. The problem is the distribution contracts with Comcast, Spectrum, Fubo. Those all have riders in those contracts that the Mariners cannot do direct to fan streaming. They have to go through them in some way. They have to be available to them. So that's what they're trying to work through. So they're negotiating with these cable distributors about, hey, look, we want to do this, and you're putting us on these higher tier anyway, so we should be able to do this. We want to renegotiate the contracts. We want to figure out a way to do this. And that's what Martinez has been working on. It's been, from everything I've heard, it's been a focus for them going in, even starting last year, is how do they get direct to consumer or direct to fan streaming without having to go through an Xfinity app or the Fubo app or whatever. And those contracts are the sticking point. And when those contracts are up and all that other stuff is going to be an issue. I think the Mariners also know, though, that like with their fan base and given the age of it, because Mabel and Yakima loves the Mariners, they are willing to pay the cable fees just to have the Mariners. And so, like, you have to assess that too. They can't go to full platform streaming, they have to find a way. So until they can reach agreements with these cable rights or these cable pack companies, these distribution contracts, I don't think you're going to see that. But moving towards MLB for the production side, which while probably might cheapen it a little bit and has cost some people some jobs, that is another step towards making that possibility. The reason like the teams like the Cardinals and Twins and stuff is they don't have RSN contracts per se. And then when Diamond Sports had to rework all their contracts and stuff like that with these teams, they were able to negotiate a straight to rights deal. Whether, even if I think the Mariners could work out a deal where they went through Amazon as a third party, they would do it. They can't do it right now and stand alone because of Comcast, because of Spectrum. I don't know what else.
What do you have an idea? But the idea behind this would be for people that do not have cable, do not have Fubo or YouTube TV. They would simply just purchase a streaming app through that would be provided by Root so they could watch the games. Is there any talk or number being floated out how much it would cost?
No, but my guess would be 150 or something. I think the Twins is 100.
I think most of those like the Guardians, Twins, Diamondbacks, Cardinals, about $99, $100.
Yeah. That's the thing. Even if they were say they were able to negotiate a fee where you kick back money to Comcast and these other rights distributors, then or like you can get one of them to say if they can get Comcast to just put Root on their what is it, the X Anywhere app, sure, so that they could get that. If they could find that fee, then they would do that. Would Comcast accept a fee where you just pay to go through their app where they still have their commercials loading but you just pay the rights fee for Root? I don't know if they do that. That's what they're running into. And that's the biggest thing is like you have these other people that are still trying to make money off the Mariners broadcast, and they don't, the previous contracts have all been negotiated that any broadcast of Mariners has to have some kickback rights to them, and that's the holding point.
The Mitch Garver, what is Mitch Garver? It's a weird transition going from TV to Mitch Garver, but yeah, I wanted to come back to Mitch Garver because you had mentioned him. He'd been honest at the end of last season, just about the struggles he went through, physically, but more mentally. What does he look like so far in camp?
I think he's in a pretty good space. He's, like last year, he was very open and gregarious and talkative early, and then when he struggled, he's kind of quiet. We didn't see him as much. He's been kind of that same guy this year. Fresh start, fresh outlook. I think also just kind of like the idea that like hey, I'm not the guy that has to come in and help this offense and fix everything and be this middle of the order presence. Just come in and play and perform, and we'll figure out how you're going to use you. I think is pretty good for him. Like right now he's the backup catcher, and Dan Wilson has mentioned that they'll use two catchers. They'll DH Cal some, and they may DH Mitch some. And like DePoto said the same thing. It's basically whoever is producing, whoever they think is producing at the time is going to get that DH spot when Cal is catching. So whether it's Mitch Garver, Mitch Haniger, or if they want to put Solano and Raleigh in the lineup at the same time, they're going to do it. Like to me, if the one thing I'm looking at this, Raleigh needs plate appearances. And they need to find ways to get him on the field because he's one of their better power hitters and he can do damage. So they got to find ways to do it. And whether that's at times getting him in right field or left field, doing that, just he shouldn't sit for many days. Because even if it's like a lefty that isn't overpowering, Luke's numbers against lefties aren't pretty, but they're more effective than a lot of other guys. And like even DePoto said that it isn't going to be just a straight platoon. There'll be days when Luke's in there at first base against lefties. One thing is too, though, I know Luke doesn't believe first base is his best position. He's much more comfortable in the outfield.
Okay.
But he's getting better there, So I think that's kind of the weird thing that they're at is how do they do DH, how do they do second base, and how that affects everything.
He's athletic enough though, Div, that he's got a good chance to be, I think, a pretty good first baseman.
Oh yeah, and him and Perry Hill spend quite a bit of time together, and so.
How's Perry's gut looking?
It's special. Yeah, Perry was, and I got a story on Perry doing yoga. Perry doing yoga this offseason because.
Oh, I got it. Wait, is that you wrote a story on it?
I haven't yet, but he told Tyler Locklear that he needed to do yoga in the offseason because Locklear's big, fullback linebacker looking guy, who's stiff,
more flexible.
So he wanted to be more flexible, and so, but he said, I'll do it if you do it, and we'll report back, because Perry said, I would never make my guys do a conditioning that I won't do myself. And so him and Locklear both did yoga once or twice a week and reported. And so, Locklear's telling me how much better he feels. But I'm just trying to envision Perry, in a room of 40 women. He didn't do the Bikram hot yoga. I think that's, but he's a character, and he has
can you see him in Downward Dog and
oh man,
he has this pose.
He has this great line, how he yells and stuff, stop and stuff. But when he's working with the young kids, he was yelling at Arroyo and Colt Emerson, see what happens when you actually listen. And I was like, I feel like you can use that for your team. See what happens when when you're talking to your son and he doesn't lift his back foot up on a swing and pimp a homer or whatever. See what happens when you listen. That's
what this idiot did yesterday. Just idiot. We brought in an older kid who was with us last year, but he can't play Little League. So we brought him in because he throws really hard.
Yeah.
And so he's a really good pitcher. I said, I want you to pitch to them tonight, just so they can see it, and because he's not and pitch from 46.
Yeah.
You're pitching from 50 now, but it's going to come in faster. They'll never see anyone as hard as you this year. So we're just doing BP. So he's striking everybody out for the most part. I think one kid got a hit. So my kid comes up, gets him on 2 strikes. What does he do? Because they're like best friends. He wants bragging rights. He drops down a bunt.
Of course he does.
And I'm like, he's like, it's a hit. It's broke up his no-hitter. I said, do you realize, you putz, if you did that in a game, what would happen? If it goes foul, you understand. Well, but it didn't go foul. I go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
That's like Robles stealing home with 2 outs and 2 strikes.
Exactly. To say he's 100%.
I'll have you know that was the only time Robles got thrown out on a stolen base attempt last year.
Oh, what? Really?
Crazy? Yeah. That's a crazy stat, isn't it?
Yeah. What did you make of Turner's? Is that what you thought Justin Turner was going to get in free agency?
What did he get, 4?
No, I didn't get more than that. I think he got 6.
Yeah. He was asking for that much, so yeah. I thought so. I think that's
$6 million bucks.
I think that's one of the reasons why the Mariners didn't sign him, is because they weren't going to go that much.
Hey, how do you think Dan Wilson? A couple more things. Dan Wilson, year 2. How do you think it's 21-13 last year? What where do you think he gets even better at maybe in year 2, and now that he's got kind of his, well, actually really year 1 form, now that he's got his feet wet?
Like, I don't know that he's going to run a game all that differently, like from a reliever standpoint and stuff like that. It so much is like planned out pregame, like with numbers and data, and they have the numbers. He may gut feel it more, but like that's what people don't get is like Scott was a gut feel guy more than people thought. And I think the one thing with Dan is like maybe the playing time for starters or who's going good might stay. He might be resistant to platoon every once in a while more, maybe. But like, I think Dan and Scott both have the same philosophy, letting the players be themselves, trusting the players, and kind of going from that regard. So I don't know that there's going to be a significant difference. I guess probably less meetings and that kind of stuff. We're not seeing like they don't have the 3-point shooting contest and some of that stuff. Maybe it's a little more old school, but at the same time, they're out there kind of doing some fun stuff too. I mean, but the other day I posted a video of Tony Arnrich throwing the exercise ball at catchers while they're trying.
Yeah, that was a great drill.
And like people are like sitting there talking like, oh, that's stupid. We did that in college, except for my coach threw a tackling dummy at me while I was doing it. And he didn't tell me the first time it was happening. I'm sitting there and they're hitting fungos from the outfield. I'm going to catch it, and all of a sudden something just whacks me upside the head, and I go down. And I look, and it's one of those shell tackling dummies.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great drill.
Because there's stuff going on, and it doesn't allow you to focus. And I mean, and it's like this is kind of boring down here, and there's a lot of down. You got to make it fun for these guys sometimes. They're still kids at heart, and you're playing a game, so you got to make it competitive. Because I think another thing is, and that's one thing. I think the biggest thing with Dan is like, and I know Scott preached it, but I think Dan will be. I think there might be more consequences from getting away from it, is preaching the idea of team success over individual success, and so on, situational hitting. If you're up there and it looks like you're just trying to hit a tank, and when all you're supposed to do is move the runner over by hitting a ground ball to the right side of the field, or you're up there and you have a poor plan or a poor attack, with runner on third, less than 2 outs, and you punch out, I think you'll see repercussions. It might not happen right away, but you do that enough, like he may say, look, you know what? We're going to go with somebody else who's going to help us win the game more. And I think that's the one thing we've heard a lot of that from the players as well. Is just like, look, we missed it by 1 game, and we left a lot of games out on the field last year. So we need to do something different mentally to know that like it's not acceptable to fail and have a bad process and failure. And I mean, some of that may just be the maturity of this team when these guys getting older, but the recognition of it. And I think Dan, I mean, like even last year, Dan wouldn't say anything about the incident with Randy Arozarena, and I can't remember when he got hit, staring guys down and all that other stuff.
Right.
But I watched him go up to Randy and kind of just say, like, we don't do that. You're putting your teammates in a bad spot. There's better ways to handle that.